Sorry, my monitor. Okay. So I'm going to give it one more minute, and then I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our lovely panel this morning. I'm very excited about that. And as I said earlier, thank you all for joining us today. I'm hopeful that you'll find this a really informative, useful session that you can walk away with some more things for your tool belt for those of you who work with communities that are in need of this kind of information and resources. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, as I said earlier, my name is Rhonda Cooper. I work for United Way in the collective impact, community impact area, and we're pleased to be sponsoring this or hosting this webinar discussion today with our three guests on connections for caregivers. And we deliberately titled it that way because we wanted this to be a space where people could come and learn maybe some new things, maybe find out about some resources that they didn't know existed in the community. And we've got three great speakers today who I'm going to introduce now. And I'll start with Tori Greer, who's going to be our first up speaker. For those of you who don't know her, Tori's been in our community for quite a while, and she's been working most recently as the executive director of 211. President and CEO is actually her official title. And this is our region's 24/7 hotline for health and human service information, referral, suicide and crisis intervention, and mental health support. Tori joined the agency as Director of Management in 2018 after working in procurement and contract administration for the Agency for Healthcare Administration. She has a BA from Stetson University and a master's degree in public administration from FSU. Tori was drawn to 211 Big Bend because of its mission to connect others to local health and community resources, crisis and mental health support, and programs for veterans, children, and families. She believes 211 is a critical component of addressing all of the determinants of health and ensuring the community has access to available support and resources. I can speak from personal experience as a former agency director myself. 211 is a critical resource for many of the other agencies in town. Their supportive services, the 211 help book that we had for years, it was like my Bible for so many of the clients I worked with. So we're really pleased to have Tori with us this morning. Next up on my list of esteemed speakers today is Pastor Derek McGee, who I have the pleasure also of knowing. He's a board member for United Way of the Big Bend, and we are so appreciative of the thoughtful approach he brings to his role in that capacity. Pastor McGee Sr., I might add, is a trivocational leader. He's the founding pastor of Bible-Based Church in Tallahassee, which launched in 2010. He has close to 25 years of preaching ministry experience. Prior to his current pastorate, he served as associate pastor at Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church under the leadership of Reverend Stanley Walker Sr. In this capacity, he assisted with pastoral care and ministerial oversight and leading both the church's youth ministry and the collegiate and young adult ministry. He's married to his college sweetheart, and they are blessed with 2 children, which is lovely. In addition to those duties, he's an active registered lobbyist, currently serving as Chief Operating Officer for Johnson & Blanton LLC. He has nearly 25 years of experience in state government and politics. Prior to his current role, he was the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Executive Office of Governor Rick Scott. In that capacity, he was responsible for advocating and securing passage of the governor's legislative priorities. He ensured the proper and legal administration of the governor's legislative role throughout the legislative process and provided counsel and support to the governor and other staff members with regard to legislative and executive issues. In this role, he also oversaw the legislative affairs directors for each of the executive agencies. Before joining that office, he served in multiple senior leadership roles with the Department of Economic Opportunity. While at that agency was the interim executive director, chief of staff, and the director of legislative and cabinet affairs. Boy, you know, this is like, you know, who's who here. So in any case, he also has worked with the Department of Education, Business and Professional Regulation, and Elder Affairs, respectively. As if pastoring and working in Florida's political process was not enough, Pastor McGee is also the president and founder of Strategic Inflection Point LLC, which is a full-service professional development company. So, but in today's capacity, Pastor McGee is going to be sharing resources and tips and strategies related to faith-based approaches to working in that mental health space. So we're really pleased to have Pastor McGee in that capacity with us today. And our final guest panelist is equally esteemed Nancy Farrell. And she's been retired since 2006, although as I'm looking at this paper, I find it hard to believe that she's really retired. In the intervening years, she's been heavily involved in our community, serving as a standardized patient for the FSU College of Medicine, which I had to laugh when I read that. Like, is there anything standard about being a patient? I just love that title. She joined the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Florida State University and has joined a work group attempting to bring the first international clubhouse to Tallahassee. This clubhouse movement establishes a place where adults living with mental illnesses can re-enter the workforce, or at least spend the work order day maintaining and running the organization. Nancy has served as member president of OLLI at FSU in 2010 and 11, a year which saw the membership double, which therefore qualified them for $1 million endowment. Kudos to that. That's excellent. In 2017, she was selected as one of Tallahassee Democrats' 25 women you need to know, and now we all know her, so we feel very blessed by that. In 2012, she became interested and began volunteering with NAMI Tallahassee, the local affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. Beginning as the membership coordinator, Nancy soon joined the board of directors, served in several capacities, ending her board membership as the president in 2019. As the affiliate has grown and expanded programs, Nancy variously became a NAMI basics teacher, which is classes for parents and primary caregivers of children ages 5 to 21 with mental health conditions, and Ending the Silence lead presenter, which is a 50-minute presentation for middle and high school students, the program coordinator, and finally currently serves the affiliate as the executive director. Throughout her volunteer time with NAMI Tallahassee, Nancy has represented the affiliate on the Mental Health Council of the Big Bend, the Tallahassee Police Department Citizens Advisory Council, and has interviewed over 100 potential volunteers, has trained and worked with a number of young adult presenters for the Ending the Silence program, has qualified as lead presenter for Ending the Silence for faculty and staff and Ending the Silence for families. Clearly, Nancy is integrally involved in her agency and organization and the programs they present. She's also assisted in numerous family support group meetings and serves as a family support group program leader. She volunteers in the role-playing module of the crisis intervention team trainings offered to law enforcement several times a year, and which is an educational and training effort supported by NAMI affiliates throughout the country. And she has been married to her husband for 45 years, has 2 adult sons and 3 grandkids, which I know are a blessing for her as well. So welcome to Nancy, and thanks again to all of you for being here today. I wanted to remind our audience that we are recording the session today, so if that is a problem for you, please feel free to excuse yourself. We certainly can appreciate that personal space need. But we are recording it because we've had requests from people who are not able to attend today who'd like to have access to our information. We're going to be, the way this is set up, you'll have to type your questions in the Q&A, and feel free to do that as we go along. We will wait until the end of the 3 presenters to address those questions, just in the interest of keeping the flow going. And so at this time, I'm going to disappear, and I'm going to start with Miss Tori. Take it away, Miss Tori. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. And hello, and thank you, Rhonda and United Way of the Big Bend team. It's really great to have this opportunity to talk about this important topic and the resources that are available. I'm as a caregiver, it can be easy to forget about your own needs, and making a plan to take care of others means also making a plan to take care of yourself and your mental health. And it can be difficult to know where to start within the maze of resources and information that is out there. And 211 can be a really great place to start. A good first step is to find support. And I'm going to give you a kind of brief high-level overview of 211 and what resources are available. And then there's a lot of other information to get through as we move along. And like Rhonda said, if you do have any questions that come up, please put them in the chat. So for those of you who are not familiar with 211, 211 is a 3-digit number you can call anywhere in the state of Florida, and over 90% of the country, actually. And in the state of Florida, all the centers are blended crisis and suicide intervention and information and referral centers. We also answer the 988 crisis line, which is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number. In July, it was replaced with a 3-digit number, 988, which you can call if you need suicide or crisis counseling. But we provide the same level of service for 211 as well. We're both a information and referral line as well as a suicide and crisis intervention line. We've been in the community for over 52 years and handle over 2,000 calls every month from this community on both 211 and our 988 hotlines. Some key points about our services: when you call 211, the calls are confidential. Callers can remain anonymous, so you can feel safe discussing sensitive problems. All of our counselors are trained in active listening techniques, and they can help you assess your needs and provide support and referrals and offer follow-up as needed, and to make sure you're able to get connected to the resources that you need. And then our crisis intervention services include risk assessment for suicide, de-escalation of crisis, and medical interventions if needed. And we do offer follow-up and provide some advocacy when needed for callers. We also have a comprehensive resource database, and Rhonda mentioned the printouts. We used to actually, years ago, print, almost like a phone book, but for health and human services in the Big Bend. Obviously, all of that is now digital, and you can go to our website and actually search our database. And there's thousands of programs and services just within the Big Bend for basic needs all the way to mental health support and therapists in our community. And we have a very dedicated team of resource specialists that are tasked with updating all of those resources. And that's also what our counselors use when they're making referrals for people who contact us. And if you go to our website, you can find, on our searchable database, you can find resources for caregivers, including caregiver support groups, counseling specific to caregivers, and other types of training and support for caregivers, along with other basic needs, whether that be food assistance, I mentioned mental health support, and transportation. There's a lot of resources out there that I think people are not aware of, and so that's why a good place to start is 211. And you certainly don't have to be in crisis to call. But if you just need someone to talk to, or you're needing, like I mentioned, some kind of direction on where to go for a resource, we can be that starting point. We also offer support for caregivers who have small children. We have a Help Me Grow program that provides developmental screenings for children and will help connect parents and caregivers with needed services for children. So that's another special program that we offer to people who reach out to us. And I mentioned mental health. We have mental health navigators on staff who will also provide additional help with and follow up if you need to get connected to a mental health therapist or mental health treatment in the Big Bend, and need some help with knowing what insurance is accepted, or if you're searching for free or low cost mental health options. We have staff that are trained to help in those areas. And these are all resources that can help you if you're in a caregiving role and you don't know where to begin. And all of the resources that I think we'll discuss today are actually reflected in our resource database. And another good place to start is actually AARP's Florida Caregiving Guide, which will be a co-branded 211 guide. We have a partnership, a national partnership between 211 and AARP that's in development that will that'll actually have 211 branded guides for resources along with AARP. So that's another good place to start. So I'm going to go ahead and pause there because we, like I said, have a lot of information to get through. And I think we're going to move over to Pastor McGee, who's going to talk about resources within the faith-based community.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Tori, for that. And such an honor to be on the panel this morning with both Tori and Nancy, and to talk with each of you. And so when you look at it from the faith-based community, oftentimes we just aren't honest with ourselves about our need for help and support and assistance. And as a person of faith, I've even made the same mistake as a caregiver of two aging parents. There are times when you think you're Superman, and that's just not true. It's not true at all. And so from a faith-based perspective, it's a little bit different, but still important. First and foremost, I strongly support 201 Big Bend. I think that's important, that along with being a proponent and a proposer of prayer, you got to also know what's available by way of resources and being able to tap into those resources. And I think that that's very important in that regard. And so you look at it from a resource perspective from the faith-based community, I think the first thing is being connected to some, whether it's faith-based, whether it's a support group, being connected to an organization that's really sensitive and understanding and aware of what it is that you are experiencing, right? It's my mother who is the primary caregiver of my father. I've watched as her health has seemingly declined, or at least been impacted, as she cares for my dad. And I know it's generational at times where my mom is unwilling to accept outside help. But when you're watching the impact, it is important to know what is available and be able to embrace that so that you have longevity. And so there are several partnerships that, from a faith-based perspective, that we look into. Again, I am a proponent of 211 Big Bend, but I think that it's important that we not hide behind the fact just because we are people of faith does not mean that it is negative for us to also tap into what's available. And so I think that's important. I am a proponent of having a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist. I think that is very, very important. Someone that you can actually sit with, that you can be very transparent and honest with about what it is, the impact upon you. I think that's important. There are 4 things that I jotted down that I think really helps out when you look at it from a resource standpoint. The first thing is being honest with the fact that it's okay not to be okay, right? It's okay to admit that I'm just not doing well as a caregiver, that there are times where it's just overwhelming, that, each day is a different day, and sometimes it's just too much, right? And I think that that's important. Secondly is pray, but also seek help. And what I mean by that is there are times when, again, from my context, we'll pray and then think that's enough. And while prayer is impactful and important, you have to do a lot more than that. And so knowing what the resources are, knowing what's available to you, knowing what other available resources that are out there, partnerships that are out there that I think are important, understanding that there are organizations, that there are There are medical resources that are helpful to be able to come in. Big Bend Hospice, for example, is a good resource. You know, they can not only help the caregiver, but also help the family in general. I think is important. Looking at ways in which you can get in some home health assistance to help you get some respite, I think is important. Understanding that your rest is as important as the person that you are caring for. One of my major pushes is something I created called check in, check up, so you don't check out. And so check in means check in on yourself, right? Check in on yourself, be honest about mentally how you're feeling, emotionally how you're feeling, physically how you're feeling. Check in on yourself, and then check up, meaning that you are going to see a primary care physician, that you are having your annual wellness check done, that you are being seen by a medical expert, that they're able to do a battery of exams on you to make sure that you are as well as you need to be. And if you check in and check up, it prevents you from checking out, meaning that you won't prematurely die or expire, because it is true that sometimes a caregiver goes first because you're so committed to the person you're caring for that you often neglect yourself. And so making sure that you are regularly in conversation with a primary care physician, that you are regularly being checked on, making sure that you are regularly adhering to the counsel that's being given to you by your medical professional is very, very important. And then lastly, is developing a support group, right, of individuals, especially those who can relate to what you are experiencing. All can't understand what it means to be a caregiver. All can't relate to the pain, and this is the roller coaster ride every day. But there are support groups that are available that can help you understand what's going on, help you how to manage those perspectives. And things of that nature. And you can do all of these things and it not be negative toward you being a person of faith. We don't have to hide behind our faith as that's enough. We have to understand that these other resources are also critical to not only just the person you're caring for, but you as the caregiver. You want to have a life thereafter. I've watched my mother care for her mother, 2 sisters, and now my dad. And I've also watched my mom when my grandmother and my 2 aunts died. I watched the emotional impact my mom experienced because her entire life was centered around caring for them until when they finally died. Just the toll upon her was major. And so you want to be honest with yourself about what it is that you need. And listen, as a pastor, the church plays a critical role in that for many, but it's not the only role that needs to be played. Again, being in constant conversation with your healthcare primary care physician is important. Finding a good support group of individuals who have been where you are and can really help give you counsel, and also adhere to confidentiality, because sometimes we don't seek counsel because we don't want people to know, because we're afraid that they're going to divulge our information. And so finding a confidential group, but it's okay to admit that I'm just not doing okay in this area. I'm caring for someone as I'm also watching them struggle, and that's a lot. And so I'll pause there and then allow Nancy to chime in as well. Thank you all.
Well, that's just about a perfect segue, Pastor McGee. Thank you very much. As our biggest challenge at NAMI is having the community know that we are here and exist and offer the services that we do. The National Alliance on Mental Illness has been around for over 50 years nationally. And NAMI Tallahassee, which is the local affiliate of that organization, has been around for almost 35 years. We have 4 legs to our stool. We offer education, support, advocacy, and community engagement. What I'm doing right now qualifies for that community engagement piece. There are a couple of important things about NAMI. Number one is, and most important, is that we do not do treatment. We are not mental health professionals. We're not psychologists or psychiatrists or social workers, although many folks with that credential are involved with our group as volunteers, but because they have lived experience in this space. They either live with a mental health condition or have a loved one or a close friend who does. So number one, we don't do treatment. Number two, and second, and the close second, is that everything we do is offered at no cost. So all of our programs, education, classes, presentations, support groups, you do not have to be a member of NAMI to participate, and you don't have to pay anything. We supply all materials. Our program leaders are trained to NAMI's national standards, which are deemed as evidence-based best practices by the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So you can be certain that we, as certain as anyone can be, that we're not going to hurt you. Hopefully we will help. The worst thing that will happen is that we don't help, but we're not going to harm anybody by the things that we do, even though we don't have professional credentials. I myself am Jim's mom. My adult son lives with a mental health condition, and that's, in addition to the training I've received, my number one qualification to do what I do is that I am Jim's mom, and I have walked that path. So when Pastor McGee talks about support groups, we are your go-to place for support groups, I promise. As far as I know, NAMI is about the only program out there that really does have education and support for the families of individuals who live with mental health conditions. If you take your loved one to the Appalachian Center because they need treatment, and you say to the intake folks there, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on," their response is, hopefully they will hand you this, which is our brochure, but otherwise they will say, "Sorry, we really don't have any programs for you." So that's where NAMI Tallahassee comes in to kind of fill that gap. We have a class, an 8-week class for families and close friends of folks who live with mental illness. We have family support group that meets twice a month. We have a class on demand, which means it's online, for parents and primary caregivers of children, which is one of the classes I'm qualified to teach. Children from 5 to 22 who live with mental health issues. You don't even have to have a diagnosis. It's just moms know when their kids are struggling with mental health issues, even though it's pretty hard to come to terms with, but we know. We have something called NAMI Homefront, which is for the families and loved ones of veterans. This is particularly useful for families of vets, post 9/11 vets who have come back from multiple service terms overseas and have seen some pretty awful things and are suffering from some pretty awful consequences. NAMI Homefront is for those families who are trying to adjust to a new normal in their homes. We have something called Sharing Hope, which is a presentation specifically crafted for the minority community that is offered by the absolute most wonderful 2 ladies in the world, one of whom has an adult son with a mental illness, and the other of whom is a retired therapist who has her own mental health diagnosis. They are wonderful women, and they can really tell their stories in a most inspiring way. We have a program called FaithNet, which is outreach to faith community, any faith community, no matter what that faith might be. It is basically a bridge from NAMI, which is a secular organization, to a faith community, because we're well aware that faith plays a huge role in folks' toolkit, their options, their coping skills. So many people depend on prayer and other faith practices to basically get through the day. So we try to partner with faith communities to offer our programs in a faith setting. We have 3 gentlemen who make that presentation, all of whom are active in their own churches. So there's a really good, close, empathetic connection there. We have things for adults who live with mental illness, a class called Peer to Peer. We have 2 support groups a week for that population. We have recently started a young adult group, which is the only criterion for joining that group is you have to be between 18 and 25. We have 80,000 college students in our community right now, this time of year, and not a whole lot out there for them of a support group nature. Now they've got services, mental health services, and that's treatment, and that's therapy, and that's wonderful. But support groups, not so much. So we have one. We are about to begin a support group that's targeting the LGBTQ plus community. Once again, all of the things that we do are for adults 18 plus. The only thing we have for kids is the presentation that we make in middle and high school, which is called Ending the Silence. But we've also got an Ending the Silence for parents and an Ending the Silence for school teachers to try to, talk about some warning signs and what we can do. We try to be positive about things, but we also know that sometimes people are at the end of their rope and just don't know where else to turn. And sometimes a support group with people who have walked and are walking that path, that is proven to be at least helpful for sure. We also have a program called Provider Education, which is a team presentation with a mental health professional, a family member, and an adult who lives with mental health condition. That's available to any agency, public, private, whatever it might be, that is offering any kind of services to any population where part of what they're encountering is mental health issues. And a provider of services who needs a little bit of information about how to deal with the mental health side of the population they're dealing with. This is very helpful. We have a 4-hour seminar of provider education and also a 6-week training class that can meet once a week in the office, the workplace setting. And remember, it never costs anything, which of course it's not free to do, but we have to fundraise, and that's just a whole different conversation that we won't get into, but we offer everything. Everything is at no cost. And all of our program leaders, as I say, go to intensive training to national curriculum standards. I just am so proud of our providers. They put in tens of thousands of volunteer hours doing this. And we're all in this because we have a personal connection. In my case, my husband and I took the family to family class back in 2011, and it completely changed our family. It did not change my son one bit, but it changed us forever. And the beginning of his recovery and his current wonderful life that he's leading, taking his meds, but he's got a college degree now. He's married. He's helping his wife raise her son. He's got a mortgage. He's got a car payment. He's just like everybody else. And if you had told me 5 years ago this would be true, I would have said, no way. Recovery is possible. But a lot of it is because in our family, because we learned about what was going on and how to talk to him, how to love him for who he is, which is very important to people who live with mental illness. And so I'm a big booster of this. That's why I do what I do, because I know it works. So reach out to us. You can sign up for classes, support groups. We have a website called NAMI Support Groups with an S.org, where you can sign up for anything we do. Also, we have a local website, which is NAMI-Tallahassee.org. And there's me. What I do is talk to people on the phone. 850-841-3386 is our voicemail. My personal phone number I willingly give out. So if there's any opportunity, if anybody needs any of that information, I suspect the United Way can give us a way to make that available. At any rate, we work closely as I say, I represent NAMI Tallahassee on the Mental Health Council of the Big Bend, and we focus, we send everybody to 211 for resources. Everybody in the community should be calling 211, not just in crisis, but for all kinds of community resources. And we are a partner. We have had a project outreach to the urban church that's just been so important to what we do, bringing in folks that we never had an opportunity to even speak to before. So it's a pretty cool panel that's put here this morning, because we hit a bunch of different bases with this group. So many thanks to the United Way for inviting us. As I say, our biggest challenge is letting everybody know we exist. We're here. This is what we do. I'm retired. This is all I do. So reach out. And I think that's going to be about it for me. Thanks.
Hi, that was awesome, you guys. That was just, I don't use words like that a lot, if you know me. But I have a whole list of things I want to talk about, and I'm just so thankful to have heard and listened to all of you. I learned something new from all of you, and that's really great. So I'm gonna, I didn't notice any questions yet in the chat, but I'm gonna let Angela kind of monitor that, and I'm going to launch into some of my questions. So I'm going to start with Tori. Can you explain, Tori, the mental health navigator piece that you talked about? What are they assigned to a person, or is it like case management, or exactly what does a mental health navigator do in your organization?
Sure. So I mentioned our resource directory. We also have a mental health directory where we have a staff who update therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and other types of mental health support in the Big Bend. And when anyone calls us or texts us or chats with us on our website, if they have a mental health need, we'll offer a mental health follow-up, and a mental health navigator will be assigned to that person, and we'll reach out to them and offer some additional support, maybe offer additional referrals, see how the initial referrals worked out for them, and see if maybe some additional advocacy is needed for that person to make sure that they're getting connected to what they need. So all of our counselors are trained to do follow-up, but the difference with the mental health navigators is they do really specialize in those mental health resources and helping to ensure that people get connected. You can also call 211 and ask for a mental health navigator too.
Great. I was just reminded that if any of the attendees raise their hand, we can unmute you and you can ask your question in person. You don't just have to use the chat. So feel free to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to like usurp all the air in the room because I still have so much I want to talk about. Thanks for explaining that, Tori. Another quick question I have, we keep talking, all of us have talked about resources available on the web and that sort of thing. Are there any apps that work on this? I just know that, you know, there's a lot of people who are not navigating a website, but they will use an app. If it's, you know, that's just the way, particularly younger people are sort of wired now to go in that direction. And I'm just wondering if you've got apps that provide some of these resources.
Yes, and actually, so our website is mobile friendly, and the majority of people that access our site are doing so from a phone.
Okay.
That's probably true of most websites now, given how many people are attached to their smartphones. And so it's easy to navigate on a phone. And then we also have an app for 211, so you can actually download the app, Android or iPhone, and navigate resources that way. But all of that information is really easy to navigate on the mobile version of the site.
Great,
So,
good to know.
and it's 211bigbend.org. So.
We have a
Yeah.
question from
Yes.
Ms. Smith, if you'd like to ask your question.
Trevika, you may have to unmute yourself as well.
Okay, I think, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm really loving this session. It's very informative. I am a former caretaker of my own mom for 10 years, so I wish I had known about some of these programs. However, I have moved forward and I'm working as a caregiver for the elderly. And I do find I do work with some mental health, issues, and so this is very informative. But what I want to ask is, your agencies that you've mentioned, Ms. Tori and Ms. Nancy, do they work with other agencies, or could I advocate for my clients and getting information to help? Because sometimes, like Pastor McGee said, with the older generation, they're not so willing to reach out because they're only relying on the faith part. So in that instance, how does that work for like other agencies that want you guys to help their clients?
Good question. Good question. Nancy or Tori, you want to hop in?
That is a great question. That's something where, our services are, historically, it's up to the person to call us first, that initial call. But we are working on other ways to, with the person's consent, be able to call somebody, make an outbound call.
Okay.
And so, Nancy, if you want to add let me think a little more about how to answer that question better. But I think that's it's a really good question. It is one that we're working on,
Okay.
better addressing those individuals who may need some help, but need someone else maybe to reach out. And you can always call and on behalf of someone and ask for resources, and we can help.
Okay.
You don't have to, you can call for someone you're working with.
Mhm.
So that's one way to do that.
Okay.
In terms of NAMI, you and I can talk on the phone,
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
and you can tell me without breaking confidentiality
Right.
what your client might need,
Okay.
what age person would be good to talk to your client.
Yes.
If your client is a person of color,
Mhm.
will be culturally appropriate. We've got volunteers of all shapes, sizes, races, religions, genders, you name it.
Mhm.
This is what we do all day long. I talk to people on the phone. So yes, we partner with anybody, and would be happy to do a group meeting, an individual, just pretty much whatever. We follow your lead on this kind of thing. So
Okay.
I don't know, Rhonda, if I put my phone number in the chat, can the participants see it? I don't know
If
how
they put
this
it,
works.
they should be able to, that's a question I can't answer. I was gonna say they should be able to see it, but I really don't know. But if they,
Okay,
if they email us, we can share that
everyone.
information. The recording will be posted, but we can also do little blurbs for everybody's numbers and that sort of thing, so that it'll be an easy access. Well, I can see it when you put it in the chat.
Okay,
So
I did it to everyone. So Trevika, can you see it?
Yes. Oh, it left. I was writing as it was there.
Oh, darn.
I
Click
got
on,
the
see if
Bible.
you have a place to click on it again, Trevika.
Okay.
At the bottom, if you roll your cursor along the bottom and you see chat, you
there
might
it is.
be,
There
Yeah.
it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay. And really, I give this number out to everybody. So feel free to call me if, If I can't
Okay.
answer, I'll return a call. So that's what I do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think Nancy answered that question a lot more clearer than I did. I just want to reiterate, and I apologize, that you can always call us on behalf of someone without, again, we're a confidential hotline, but you know, giving us some of the same information that Nancy mentioned earlier, and we can help get you connected. So.
And
Okay.
I want to hop in real quick and just mention also that, Travika, if you go to the NAMI website, they have some links to watch some kind of short videos, which were, oh my gosh, they were so helpful and informative and, you know, just really, really heartfelt
Okay.
vignettes that are, you know, people sharing their experience. Really, really useful, I
Great.
thought. Just as an, you know, the observer, just kind of checking out the resources that were there. And I just thought, boy, I'm sure, I feel, I'm excited about this opportunity to share these kinds of resources with our community, because I really feel like we've got so much that's available, and not
Yeah.
everybody's really aware of what is around. So anyway, excellent question, Travika, absolutely. Intervening or reaching out on behalf of somebody, that's just what's going to happen for a lot of people. They're
Mhm.
not going to be able, for whatever reasons, to be able to take that step themselves. And we
Mhm.
need people like you who are going into that space and helping facilitate conversations and you know, get resources shared.
Yes.
In the absence of another question, I'm gonna bring up mine again. So I want to talk to Pastor McGee real quick. I loved that your concept of you have to take care of yourself, and it's not just prayer. Like there's all these other bits and pieces that have to be addressed, and there's that spiritual component, and that prayer is going to be that support, and your community is your congregation members, your pastor, whomever, are going to provide that support. But there's also that piece where you have to take advantage of the other resources that are going to deal with the stuff that can be dealt with medically, or in talking to a trained therapist. That I just love that you really emphasize the need for that duality. It exists. You know, nothing operates in a vacuum, and I love that piece. And I also liked your little check in, check up, and so you don't check out. I really appreciated that.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering if you know of, and you could either speak from your experience or not, but are there faith-based organizations in town that are dealing particularly with mental health issues in that kind of integrated approach?
Honestly, I'm not aware of any, and that doesn't mean there isn't any. I mean, you know, as a clergy and from a faith standpoint, I am an advocate for making sure we tap into the resources. There's no need for duplicative work. I mean, listen, NAMI and two on Big Bend are very well respected. The confidentiality piece is of utmost importance, which they both have reputations for. Oftentimes, unfortunately, we don't create partnerships. We being faith-based, we don't create the partnerships long-term that are necessary. And I think that that's important, whether it's the abuse hotlines, whether it's the area agencies on aging, right? All of these things are available in that regard. But from a faith-based partnership, I'm not aware of any one church or faith organization that has this. Now, I'm quite sure there are some. And I want to be very clear, in my lack of knowledge does not mean they don't exist. I want to be clear about that.
Yeah. A lot of time there's stuff out there that just hasn't
Right.
crossed over your path
Right.
yet. But
Right.
well, I love this opportunity for some of this information to be through our people who are attending, that hopefully some of this information is going to be dispersed within all those communities, and we can start to see some of that cross transfer. 211 and NAMI, those are both free resources for the
Correct.
community. And I think it's really critical that people are aware that there's advocacy, you know, available, and information available that can provide help and support to people. Nancy, moving on. I had a question. One of the things was you talked about the support group for that sort of 18 to 24-year-old group. And you specifically mentioned, there's 80,000 college students here, but I'm sort of interested in how do we get to those community members in that age range who aren't in college? Like, what kinds of ways of reaching that community? Are you guys working to try and address that community? And I speak specifically, given the amount of attention that we've recently had on that age group related to so many things that are happening in our community. And I'm just wondering if NAMI's been trying to work within that space with support groups, but that are not targeted towards the college student for that age group.
We don't specifically, there's no requirement to join this group that you be in college. It's just an age requirement. We realize that a lot of people in our community, get done with high school and go to work, or, get married and start having babies or whatever. So we market this just in our general marketing to the community. Now, how we reach them, it's a lot easier to reach the college community because they've got, places we can post flyers and
Right.
online lists of things that we can access. We're very involved with a group now. We're working particularly with Black Men's Health, and have recently had
Yes.
an event at FAMU with young men on the FAMU campus who are campus leaders and are doing outreach to the community that surrounds FAMU, to people of their own age and also to teenagers, in kind of a mentoring situation. We just have these little pockets of folks that this town is one that's just got hundreds of small nonprofits that reach out to all different kinds of target audiences. And all we can do is try to partner with as many of those groups as we can and get the word out that we're here. So in a roundabout way, I would say it's difficult. Well, I'll take it back. My program coordinator is 25, and she is so into social media. There's stuff out there from us on Instagram and Facebook, and we even have a YouTube video. So we're hoping that we reach young people that way. And we're building this group. It's a slow process, but the way it's going to grow is by word of mouth. People are going to tell their friends, and that's just how young people roll. And I'm old. I'm really old. My grandchildren are teenagers, so I count on my young volunteers to guide me in this. In the outreach that we do. So we're trying to learn how to reach that population. Let me just put it that way.
I totally recognize what you're saying. It's easy when you've got mediums that target direct, like the college students have. There's ways to approach that group, but when you've got a more disparate group, it's not connected through necessarily the same things, then it starts to be a little more challenging. But I'd love to have conversations with you about, maybe working with some of the community centers. Is there a way to get volunteers who go in those community centers and just have resources available? Food pantries, like, in that some of our neighborhoods where we know that people are being impacted by so many other stressors, that might be an ideal place to just every once in a while see if we can get volunteers to sit at a table and just talk to people about what's available and that sort of thing.
It's a really good idea. And we do have a lot of young people volunteers. The young people in our community are pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Many of them are my heroes for sure, because they work, people who care, who are doing the work is what we call it. So
I don't have any other things on my list that are not very specific. So I'm just going to hold off on that and talk to y'all separately about that later. But I've so appreciated all of you for what you brought to the table today. And I've learned a lot, got lots of ideas. So I'm excited to maybe have some more conversation with each of you about other opportunities in our community to help make sure these resources get more widely shared and utilized, because it just, mental health is a huge and growing issue, not only in our community, nationwide. I can speak to my own experience. I have family members who have struggled with mental health issues for a year, and there, but for a few little brain wiring synapses go I. It's just, there's just so many of us are impacted by this issue. And I'm all for the more conversations we can have, the more sunshine we can shed on this. I think we'll go a long way towards resolving some of these issues. So I really appreciate you all taking the time today to come out and chat with us, and excited and hopeful that this leads to some more really great outcomes for people in our community. So with that, if barring any other hands or anything else in the Q&A, which I don't see, I appreciate your time. And again, we're going to post all this information on our website, but also anybody's welcome to email me, rhonda@uwbb.org, and I can put you in connection with any of our presenters and or share information with you all. So thank you everybody for coming today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.